Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let's get started on these brows. The first thing that I like to do before I start on my eyebrows is apply a little bit of brow wax. This is a brow wax made by Milani. You can get it at the drugstore. It's super inexpensive and it lasts forever because of how thick it is. And I like to just run this through my eyebrows. This helps keep all of the eyebrow hairs in place when you're trying to groom them and you're trying to pluck them and do all that stuff. Now that I've applied the brow wax, I'm going to go ahead and comb through them. You can use a comb or a spoolie, whatever you have. I'm running my spoolie through my brows and I'm making sure that I comb the eyebrows in the direction that they grow naturally. This will help you when you go to trim them. You'll trim with the shape instead of against it, and you won't have patchy areas and areas of unevenness. You can see that towards the inner eyebrow, the hairs tend to grow up, and then when you get to the arch and to the tail end, the hairs grow out. So just look at your eyebrow shape and brush it accordingly. Now the next step is to trim them. The scissors that you use to trim your eyebrows are really important. You want to make sure that you have small, straight-edged scissors. If you have scissors with a curve, you'll accidentally cut into the brows and that will mess up the shape of the brows. You can use a spoolie to help you trim your eyebrows, or you can do it freehandedly. If you're a beginner, I would definitely recommend using a comb or a spoolie. Here I'm going to do it freehandedly. What I've done is I've brushed the hairs up and I'm using my natural brow shape as a reference point. Any hairs that extend beyond the natural shape and the natural hairs of your eyebrows, you're going to want to trim. You can see that there are some hairs that have grown beyond the natural shape of the brow. So that's what I'm doing, is just trimming those. Now, as I move towards the tail end of the brow, I'm starting to spoolie or comb those hairs out. Again, it's very important to remember to cut at a straight angle or with the shape of your eyebrows. I know I'm kind of exaggerating in this clip here, but I'm showing you that any deviation from that angle of your natural shape will affect your brow. Trust me, I've done it, and I want to save you guys from having to deal with that. I've trimmed the inner and outer brow, and you can see here that I'm just combing through the hairs to see if there are any strands that I still need to go in and trim up. Now that I'm finished with one of my eyebrows, I'm going to move on to the other. Again, just doing the same thing, keeping the angles with the brow, trimming whatever is above the natural shape, and taking my time, really. That's the best advice I can give you, is to just be patient with it, because you can always go back and trim more. But if you mess up, you'll just have to take some time to grab them back in. So again, I'm working from the inner eyebrow towards the tail end. And now we're going to move on to the next step of grooming the brows. Now this trick is amazing. You're going to want to use any kind of concealer stick or concealer pencil that you have. If you don't have one, you can totally use your normal concealer, but I would recommend investing in this concealer pencil made by NYX. Super inexpensive, and it will help you out tremendously in grooming and shaping your eyebrows. You're going to use this to map out your eyebrow shape. That way when you go to pluck the hairs, you know exactly what borders to stay within and you won't over pluck, and everything will look really nice and even. When you use this to draw out or map out your eyebrow shape, you want to make sure that you're drawing straight lines. The reason why I love threading so much is that when your eyebrows are getting threaded, that straight line gives it a really nicely defined shape. So I'm going to attempt to do the same thing, but by drawing or mapping that straight line out with this concealer pencil. I like to tilt my head back so that I can see exactly where I'm shaping. This also helps to keep things very even on both sides. So I'm going to start from the bottom here, and I'm going to draw a straight line right across the bottom of my eyebrow. This is going to shape that area, and it's going to create a border for me to stay within. So when you're drawing or shaping this line here, make sure you're going with the natural shape of your eyebrow. You can see here that my eyebrow naturally just has a shape. Now what I'm attempting to do is just to clean that shape and define it. I'm going to do that by drawing a line right underneath my eyebrow shape. That way, anything that is beneath it or along that line will get cleaned up, and it'll create a really nicely defined shape underneath. You saw that I took my time and made very short strokes. This will be really nice because you're not only going over that line and making it more defined so you can have a more defined border, but also if the slower you go, the less you're going to mess up and have to go back and clean things up. I'm just going over that line again, and you can see that for the eyebrows, I like more of a shape that is a little bit arched. And because my eyebrows are naturally shaped that way, I'm just enhancing what's already there. This is where my arch begins. And then the eyebrow starts to kind of decline there. So what I'm going to do is just follow the natural shape of my brow, like I said earlier. The longer that you let your eyebrows grow in, the more difficult it is going to be to kind of see that defined shape. So that's just something to keep in mind. As you can see here, I do have longer eyebrow hairs because I opted to let them grow in because I wanted a more fuller brow this time around, and I wanted to show you guys how I do my eyebrows. But just keep that in mind in the future. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to clean them up and maintain that natural shape if you let them grow in too long. So I'm going right along the arch, and I'm taking making slow strokes. And then right down towards the end or tail end of the brow. Anything along this line and anything underneath it is what I'm going to clean up. Now that I have the bottom mapped out, I'm going to do the same thing with the middle and the top of the brow. So the middle should be pretty easy because there's not very much hair growing in this area. Now with the top, you want to be careful because you don't want to overpluck the top. It'll really ruin the shape of your eyebrows. You can see that I'm not going into the eyebrow shape at all. I want to keep the top as natural looking as possible. You're going to hear me say natural like a million times. Because the top is just so defined already, the only part that's not as defined is the arch, and you do want to be careful with that as well because you don't want to ruin your natural arch. But I'm just really going to sweep right along the top of that and just get any of these stray hairs. I'm not even going to mess with the shape at all. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other side. Now that my shape is mapped out, I'm going to opt for using a tweezer to clean up the eyebrows. You can definitely use wax. Now, waxing is a little bit more difficult and you are prone to taking more off than maybe you would want. If you are a beginner and if you're trying this for the first time, I would definitely recommend that you just use a tweezer. That's what I do. It's easier to get right in there and right along the mapped out line to make sure you get every single hair so that that line is super clean. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we will kind of go back and trim any hairs that we need to after that's done. Now that I'm finished tweezing, I'm going to wipe off this concealer. I'm going to check my eyebrows out, see if I need to clean up any other areas, if I need to trim any of the hairs, and then we'll go from there. You can see that I have wiped away the concealer, and you can definitely tell a difference in the shape and the look of the eyebrows. I'm going to go through the eyebrows and tweeze any stray hairs that I need to tweeze, and then I'm going to go and do a little bit of trimming of the eyebrows again, so you can see that there's just a few little strands that I need to trim again. And I'm just going to trim those hairs. You can always go back in and tweeze some more or trim some more, so take your time. If you mess up, it's a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to wait till you grow the hair out. So take your time and be patient with it. I like to tilt my head back and just make sure that everything is even. If you find that things are not even and you need to go back in and adjust the shape, definitely try this technique again. I'm telling you, it'll save you a lot of time and stress if you really give yourself a border to work with. Now that I am happy with the results of the brows and the shape, I'm going to show you guys how I fill my brows in and shape them with makeup. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can fill in your eyebrows and shape them. One is with a brow pencil like this. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz. It's a very fine brow crayon. This is probably my favorite way to shape the eyebrows at the moment because the end is so small. You can draw in very natural looking hairs and shape your eyebrows that way. It's also great for filling in any areas that are sparse. So right here you can see that there's just a little sparse area. By taking this Brow Wiz and just kind of flicking it in there and creating small strokes of hair, you can see that it easily has covered up or masked that sparse area and it looks a lot more full. And I really like that it has this spoolie end that you can go through the eyebrows with. So to make it even more natural looking, after you go ahead and draw in the little lines, you can go back through the eyebrows with the spoolie and brush through that area. And what it'll do is diffuse some of that product that you've applied and make it look a lot more natural. Another way that I like to fill in my eyebrows is by using a brush like this that's tapered at the end. The shape of this brush really allows you to go in and shape the eyebrow easily. What I like to use with the brush is a light brown shadow like this. This is the color Taupe and it's from the Lorac Pro palette. Any brown or taupe eyeshadow should work for you. Any brow powder is essentially eyeshadow powder. So if you have something in your collection that looks similar to the shade of your eyebrows, play around with that and see if you can use that before having to go out and get something new. You can also use something similar to this. This is a soft brown from MAC. Depending on the color of your natural brows, I would definitely go lighter than darker. Filling your eyebrows in with a darker shadow will just make them look really bold and strong. And it really does make a difference to the face. So try something a little bit lighter and see how that works, and then work your way darker if you feel like it's too light. I just dipped this tapered brush into the shadow. Knock off the excess there. So I don't start towards the very inner corner of the eyebrow. Right here is where I start. And what I do is I take this tapered brush, I set it right along the base of the shape, like this. And then I flick the brush up. You can see that there's a little bit of a difference here. You can see that it looks a little bit more fuller here towards the middle where I started. Moving my way towards the middle of the eyebrow. And then towards the outer corner. Now that I've filled it in a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take my spoolie and brush it out. Again, this will kind of distribute some of that product so it's not so concentrated in one area. Now that I've added some of the powder to the eyebrow, I'm going to go in with this Brow Wiz. I like to use the Brow Wiz to define the shape of the eyebrow. So I'm going to go in right where I started with the brow powder, underneath here, and draw a straight line similar to the way that I drew in that concealer. But I'm going to draw in the bottom of the eyebrow. This really defines the bottom shape of the inner eyebrow. And then what I like to do is flip over to the spoolie side and brush out some of that product. Again, it distributes it, it buffs some of it out so it's not so concentrated, and it makes it look a little bit more natural. So you can see that I didn't go all the way in. I like to keep the inner part of the eyebrow untouched because, again, there's that natural word, we keep it a lot more natural looking. It doesn't look like you just drew on an eyebrow. I prefer it to look a little less drawn in. You can also go in on the top of the brow if you want to define that. I have pretty good shape on the top of my brows, so I don't like to touch the top too much. It's just the bottom that I like to shape. You can see there's a little bit of sparseness right here that I'm going to kind of flick the Brow Wiz into. And again, just going through it just to brush out some of that product and distribute it. You can already see that it looks a lot more full. It looks filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing towards the tail end of the eyebrow. Here I have a little bit of sparseness, you can see right towards the tail end. I'm going to fill in that area to have a more defined end or tail of the brow. The softer and smaller your strokes are, the more natural that your eyebrows are going to look, and the less pressure you put on the Brow Wiz, the more natural the result's going to be as well. And then I like to just extend the tail of the brow just a little bit. And you can see it is looking a lot more full, a lot less sparse than the other side. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. There's a lot more sparse areas in this eyebrow than the other one. And you can see they're a little different, which it is what it is. You know, most people's eyebrows are not exactly the same, and that's okay. I've learned to just embrace it and live with it. You want to just try your best to kind of embrace the shape that each eyebrow has while still trying to make them look similar. Draw a straight line right across. It gives you such a great, simple way. It's hard to do this while talking. I'm gonna just, give me a second here. As I was saying, it's such a great way to give your brows shape. A great, quick way to give your eyebrows shape and to help them look a lot more put together. So yeah, those are the brows. This one is just naturally a little bit thicker than this one, and I can try to even it out a little bit. Again, I don't mind that they look a little different. I'm just embracing the natural shapes of the brows the way that they are. This is basically what I do. This is the final look. You can also use concealer to clean up the edges and the shape if you'd like. It'll give you a lot more of a defined shape of the brow. I'm going to skip this step for today because I'm going to keep it kind of minimal. But another thing that I like to do is I like to go over the brows with a brow gel. This is a tinted brow gel from Anastasia Beverly Hills. You can get a clear one. You can use clear mascara if you can find it at the drugstore. You don't have to get the expensive product. You can get drugstore brand. They tend to work just fine. What I like to do is just to run a little bit of this product through the brows. And what this does is it really keeps your eyebrows in their place. It's like a hairspray in gel form for your eyebrows. And speaking of hairspray, if you don't have this, you can definitely just use hairspray. Spray a little bit on your finger and run it through your brows, and then use a spoolie or a little brush like this to brush them into place, and they seriously won't move until you wash your face. I think mousse should work too. Any tacky product that'll hold hairs in place, you can totally swap out. I like using this especially when I'm not going to use the powder or the Brow Wiz and I want to do a little something extra with my eyebrows to help them look a little bit more put together. It really does make such a huge difference, and it helps with any of the sparse areas by filling it in with the tint. So that's it. That's how I grew my own eyebrows. This is how I filled them in. I hope you guys have learned something new for yourselves. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll try my best to get back with you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye guys.